Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. I think it will take us a little bit more time to gather everyone here, but we will start nonetheless. We will do the intro, and I will go over a little bit of agenda, and then our lovely speaker will have time to present. But as I said, thank you for joining us. Today we are running a webinar. It's targeted to startup founders, and in our day and age, AI is a hot topic. And today we're going to discuss how AI is transforming the startup fundraising. I'm personally super curious about the insights that Brigitte will be bringing because I think it's very relevant for everyone who is in this space. And as I mentioned, we will have a small agenda. This is how we usually run our webinars. And if you haven't been attending any of the webinars we ran before, excuse me, you can go and watch because we have all of them available either on YouTube or LinkedIn. We always target them at the startup founders. And we try to cover the most relevant topics within the fundraising or just startup journey. And today we will have a small introduction that is happening now. Then Brigitte will go over her presentation that we have discussed previously, and she will cover the most relevant questions on the topic. Then we will also have a Q&A section at the end. So if you have any questions, drop them in the comments wherever you're watching, and we will try to address all of them. And at the end, it will be just a wrap up, and that's it. And if you will be wanting to rewatch the webinar, you will be able to do it later on. It will be uploaded to our LinkedIn and YouTube, or you can also share it with someone who wasn't able to attend, but you think must watch it. And without further ado, I will welcome Brigitte. She has been investor and she has been building the startups and being an entrepreneur for many years. And now she has evolved her previous business into efino.ai, the tool that helps startups to fundraise. I will give you the floor, and probably you can do much better introduction of yourself because you have lived your life.
Thank you so much, Daria. Hello, everyone. Just to make sure, do you see my screen and can you see and hear me okay?
We can hear and see you, and now we can see your screen as well.
Okay, perfect. Thought it would be really great today to tell you a little bit about my journey in the world of AI when it relates to fundraising, both as an investor and as an entrepreneur. And then a little bit on going a little bit deeper of as an entrepreneur, where I see that we can use AI for fundraising and some of the things to also watch out for, because it's not all positive, like so many things in life. And then there's be lots of time for you to ask questions, share experiences, because we're all discovering. And then we'll have some next steps and a little bit of wrap up. So indeed, what brought me to look into fundraising and AI? It's really because both as an entrepreneur, I've done fundraisers for businesses I've led, either my own or where I was CEO of company, fast growth, deep tech companies. Fundraising was always quite an intense period of time. And it was never that easy to really know, okay, what is the right strategy? So is it the right timing? How much to raise? For what? Which kind of financing instruments? Which investors? How do we find them? How do we still lead the business and do the fundraise? So targeting. And then once we're in it, how do we do it as efficiently as possible? And many companies, we have stops and goes when we're doing the fundraising process. And actually what's interesting is it's also super hard for the investors. So I started looking at the process and where are there places where we could make it much more effective and also much more efficient, knowing though that realistically there's probably only about 10% of startups who can do the fundraise in one whole swoop, and it's all great. As I mentioned, there's lots of stops and goes. And I saw that AI could be an amazing contributor to improve this effectiveness and efficiency. And very similarly to what I experienced back in the day when the internet came, I was senior vice president, a very young senior vice president at American Express, leading one of the first actually corporate incubators. And our task was to see, we were the largest travel agency in the world, had about a couple of thousand, 5 to 10,000 travel agents. And we first saw the internet as being an amazing tool to automate some of the like round trips, Paris, Zurich, or New York, Boston, things like that. And we partnered with Microsoft and to say, listen, you guys understand technology, we understand travel, let's start using the internet to automate some of the really complicated processes. These were, I don't think any remember, but these were physical tickets that you needed to have, and the whole process was very complex. And from that was born Expedia. And very quickly, we saw that beyond the automation, actually the internet was going to transform. And I see the same thing happening with AI, that at first in fundraising, things that we'll be showing you, we're still at about the tools things. So things that take a lot of time, both for the entrepreneurs and investors, trying to automate them. Already we're starting to have that some of the pieces of the fundraising process can probably start talking to each other. In the future, it will probably totally transform AI, how we do it. My passion is, how do we benefit from this or drive this? How do I drive this transformation while still keeping the human at the heart of what is happening? Because having been an entrepreneur, until there's going to be tokenization and things like this, where I don't even need to know who is in my company. Once somebody becomes a shareholder, I really want to understand what kind of governance they want, who they are, how they will bring value to the business, especially early stage. And same thing as an investor, I still want to meet the entrepreneur and see how we connect, see how I can help. So my whole passion of integrating AI in fundraising is from things that are right now inefficient or not very effective, bringing more efficiency and effectiveness, but while keeping the human in the center. And that's why at efino, the way we approached it is we're already providing services to different parts of the early stage financing ecosystems around the world. And we were already doing training and having mentoring and having lots of worksheets and tools. And now the whole thing is, how do we bring all that together and start having AI do as much as possible in that process, but while still keeping the human place. So right now we're delighted to be here. Thank you, Dylan. We're very happy to be a partner. As an investor, I use Dylan, especially to syndicate deals, and you as entrepreneurs come to Dylan to raise funds, and so we thought it's a perfect partnership. So that's a little bit the journey, and we'll talk a bit, but then the core will be you asking questions or sharing experiences. That's a little bit the journey, and this is how efino.ai came.
Thank you.
Oh, is it okay that I go to the next?
Absolutely.
Slide?
This is why we're here. Let's get into it.
Okay. So now if we look specifically what's happening, what's interesting here, and it is my own experience, is that actually investors are using AI more than entrepreneurs are using AI, it seems, in the fundraising or investing process. And this is always looking at pre-seed to Series A. And here we see a little bit of what investors are already using. Especially, I see the VCs, less business angels. I'm an angel investor, and I've done 4 also angel funds. There's more and more tools so that investors, especially the corporate investors, they use AI tools to identify the companies that probably would make sense in a certain sector with a certain technology. We see here that Europe, again, how accurate are these? I don't know. US is already higher than Europe, but we're not too far behind. Then in due diligence, it's true that I'm on many juries, and some are allowing us now to use AI when we're screening, evaluating the applications of the entrepreneurs. So in due diligence, it's very much being used. We'll talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges on using this, but they are. Also, what is helping investors is that, especially this is where we come from business angels, there's a lot of analyses we could not afford to do before that VCs probably would, because they would take 6 months, have a couple of analysts to really do all the aspects of due diligence. Now AI is helping a lot of investors, especially the early stage investors, do deeper checks on the team, also do deeper analyses on the financials, being able to compare a lot more with what might be industry benchmarks. So other startups in your sector at your stage, in some cases, geography, even though the big warning is there's huge implicit biases on US models of startups and of US Silicon Valley types of investors, or especially, take as much as you can types of investors. So that's one of the things that we'll talk about. And also very much in terms of applying for grants, applying for accelerators, and putting those things. That is where the investors are also looking at this, or looking at what chances we might think that you would get other types of financing, or what are the chances you have of exiting. So all sorts of things that normally we wouldn't even think of doing in pre-series A, and before pre-series A, investors are doing. Now, how about entrepreneurs? So this is interesting. Again, how real is it? But it looks like there are less use of entrepreneurs, specifically in their fundraising, of AI. So here we see the US seed, pre-seed, seed, 35-20%. It was harder to find. Well, I'll tell you a bit of what they're using. Series A already goes higher, but not the EU. And then beyond, it goes higher and higher. So it's true that a number of the tools also that exist have automated, especially the big thing has been automating all the management of the pipeline of investors. And so a lot of the platforms that are existing for fundraising, you already know how fundraising works, and it's really just to almost like a very smart CRM tool. Okay, and then this says that if you're specifically an AI company, you tend to use it, but not so much more. Okay, so that's a little bit what we are seeing is it's happening. And if you're not doing it, investors are doing it. So the key is now, how do we use it? But how will we appear? How will we be assessed by investors, knowing that these tools are highly biased? And I'll show you some of the biases that are in it. And that more and more, it's not just about us as entrepreneurs going and looking for investors, but investors already having us potentially on their radar screen. How do we get visible in the world of AI, which is different than being visible in the world of search engine optimization? That's one of the huge transformation that's happening. So when we look at practical, now, are there any questions? Should we, or we wait, or do I continue, or do you want to see if
You can continue. We still don't have any questions, but if someone has a question, please drop it in the comments and we will address it.
Okay.
But for now, we can continue.
I can continue. Okay. So then, okay, there is this transformation happening. As I mentioned, right now, it's more automating and being able to do a bit more than we could as investors. What does that mean for us as entrepreneurs? So the first one is the why. It's always for an entrepreneur when we think fundraising is, can we use or to use AI to try to already be more coherent and attractive in the key elements of a fundraise. So for example, on the efino.ai platform, the first thing we started with was a fundraising readiness assessment. And those were six components. Is this the right time? Are we ready for, especially if it's going to be equity financing, are we ready, the founding team, the existing investors, in doing a fundraise? 3, what we're asking for, is it realistic? Is it the right amount and for the right KPIs to be evolving from where they are now to the next stage? Knowing that for most investors, they view fundraising as a matrix, a number of key elements that make up a business, starting with the team, the value proposition, the actual technology, the infrastructure, etc., and stage. And for each one of these, what are kind of critical milestones? And overall, what are the 4 or 5 key metrics that a startup, given a sector and a stage, should have reached? And as it's raising money, it's to be prepared to be at the milestones and KPIs that will be expected at the next stage of financing. Because even as entrepreneurs, if we think, great, I can raise for 2 years, and anyway, I'll only need 2 fundraises in my whole journey until I'm fully self-sufficient, or I'll be acquired, or start the process of IPO. The reality these days is it's more like 4 to 6 rounds of financing on average, and investors do not want to give, and that probably will go even less and less that they will give for 2 years. It's going to be more and more milestone driven. Great, you see this opportunity, I fund it. You'll see when you achieve that, well, we discuss how, as the process will go faster and faster, it will also probably become more and more focused on what people are providing money for. So the why is really using AI so that we have, and the next thing, this was how much to raise. The next thing is, how competitive is our offer? Are we targeting the right financing instruments, the right equity instruments? Then also, what are the terms that we're willing to offer? Are they competitive? And then the last 2 are we targeting the right kinds of investors within the type of financing we want? And are we really managing the sales process, the fundraising as a sales process, as an investor funnel? And are we all set to manage this fundraise while building the business and have a clear plan B? So readiness and assessing AI can really help. That's to at least be for the effectiveness piece. And then for the efficiency, you have examples here of how entrepreneurs are using AI. What's wonderful is you see here that there's also elements that include very much about the funnel management of investors. And what's not written here, but definitely I've seen some entrepreneurs do it, is you doing deeper due diligence on who's going to come. So one of our tools, which is for your investor, getting some potential investors, it's also gives you a little bit of an idea of what might be some similar investments that they've made. What would be the hook? What else can you know about them besides what's directly on their website? Okay. And again, the benefits that entrepreneurs are saying, it's all about saving time and also being more effective. So that's a little bit how we thought when we started looking about what would be useful for entrepreneurs and built the efino.ai platform, it was first, there's certain things that we need to better understand what we're entrepreneurs and doing a fundraise to get ready. So some assessment elements. There's often still a lot we want to learn because investors are already now expect us to understand really well the whole languaging around fundraise and what do we mean by pre-seed versus seed. Where will you need to be Series A ready? What are the different terms? What are different instruments? So we've created an element about ways to learn, and then some tools to just better execute faster. So here's some examples of the ones that are currently available. There's always some new ones that come up. And we're definitely not the only ones. So it's very important. That's one of the questions. It's very important for you to decide how you might want to use AI for fundraising. We feel ours is very useful. We do not go very, very deep because there's so many others that are there for doing your pitch. We're more, once you have a pitch or elements of a pitch, we're more the strategic part of fundraising. So the pitch, there's like Pitch Bob, there's a number of them. And also on the really deep fundraising funnel, investor funnel management, that there's quite a few players on that. We do, as I mentioned, more the elements that are around that and to automate some other parts. And what's important is when people say, well, how do I decide which AI tool I'm going to use? So once I know what I want to use, it's important for you to see where do you stand. A lot of times when we're doing a fundraise, we're in one of a couple of places. Either we've never done one, either it's a follow-on round, but it might be a follow-on round where it's going to be a new category of investors or new category of financing. And there's also cases, as I've said, if you get stuck doing a fundraise, you're not the only ones. A lot of times these AI tools have been built like ours of maybe saying where you're stuck and where you can get unstuck. Right now, most of the tools that have been developed work really well if you also have a mentor or coach. So someone who also knows quite a bit. They're not full yet self-service. I think that will come later on. But choosing a platform where if you want, you can click and get access to someone, spend half an hour saying, hey, this is what the tools are saying. Because again, AI is very good, but it has a lot of things that are not correct. And so if you're not sure, and investors do expect that you've done a reality check on whatever you will have used AI for, and you will be showing to them, having a mentor, having access to an expert can really help.
I think we have one question, and I think this is a good way to finish what you just started. And the question from Lloyd is, has efino already helped any clients to successfully raise funding? And if yes, then how many startups, customers, and what funding series and vehicles were involved?
Oh, great. So yes, I would say definitely of rounds that are completely closed. Right now, there's 3. And in terms of how many have used the platform, there's around 50, of which a good 20 realized after doing the assessment, maybe this was not yet the right timing. So then they'll come up. And the others are using the platform. I would say, I'll answer the stage, but are using also now the platform for specific elements. For example, there's one we started working with yesterday. It's really on the valuation because they really would like something that looks quite formal, that they keep on disputing between the investor and them what valuation makes sense. And our valuation tool can do 6 different methodologies. And that's something. So that's a kind of a one-off that they're doing. In terms of the 3 that raised, it's a total of 5 million. And we're just beginning. And then in terms of the stages, we see The tool works really well from pre-seed to pre-series A. There's still plenty of things on some of the specific tools that are a little bit biased, and we're going to talk about biases that in a way can be good, but there's definitely some things we've been able to really train where our values, some things still go back to kind of the underlying biases, and that's a little bit we're on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, go ahead.
I think it's important for you to tell us when you have started, when you launched AI, AI
April.
into the wild.
Yeah, so we did it this April.
So it hasn't been that long. So
no, and actually we're using it right now, almost very little B to C directly. We work with a number, we have some World Bank, have a World Bank project. We have project in Switzerland, and then we have, there's 5 entrepreneurs that have contacted us. So the majority of the 50, only about 6 are B2C. The others have come through accelerators who say, wow, they've seen how much it's helped entrepreneurs, and they tell us with coaching. Oh no, and then another accelerator. So yeah, I knew there's 3 accelerators we're working with, and that's the majority of the entrepreneurs. So it's accelerators who say, wow, this is a great company where I know you can help them both with efino.ai and also supplemented with expertise.
Thank you. And thank you, Lloyd, for the question. I think we can continue on the presentation.
Yeah, just a little bit more on these challenges. So now that we say, let's go and use it, it's really important, and you'll have access to this, but it's very important to understand, for me, there's really 2 major biases. One is a very US-centric, Silicon Valley, as I mentioned, hyper-growth startup profiles, and also investors who will only come in if they think that there's 20, 30 multiple of valuation and 4 to 5 years potential. So be very careful of both when it's generating elements for you, but also be realistic of how you might look to an investor if you don't have the pure kind of Silicon Valley startup profile. The second one is really because we do a lot of work along gender, and so I'm sure it's also along other elements of diversity. I'll share with you a little bit of some of the gender biases that already exist anyway. As I think a lot of people know that the statistics say that only 4% of kind of venture money goes to female-led startups, despite the fact that there's about now 15% worldwide of startups that are led, that seek financing, that are led by women. And it's even stronger, and we've identified where often those biases, implicit biases come, and the AI is even accentuating those. So the challenge are both making sure what you are going to do with AI before you share it with investors, or you use it as this is the truth, that you validate it, and know that the reverse is going to happen. So this is just some of the examples. I think we've all heard of the kinds of challenges, and here we share some of the things that you can basically what you can do. Key thing is really make sure that you check and that you find a way to stay authentic, but that you have adapted how you give the information and things like this so that it puts you in the best light possible. But you need to stay authentic. And that's why the human, to me, needs to stay in the center. And same thing here. Here are some of the implicit biases especially, for example, here we see the sector a lot. When you analyze a lot of female-led startups are in sectors that might not be known very well to investors. I was with two female entrepreneurs today. They're both in femtech. One is in pre-menopause hormone analysis, and the other one is for some aspects of skin. And it's true, if there's very few, there's about 5% of investors who are female, and sometimes some of these things that might not be things that they are familiar with, therefore it's very hard for them to invest. A lot of people do invest in things that they feel they can understand, and they can ask friends, hey, what do you think about it? So the sector element, and on average, as female entrepreneurs, when we put our projections, it's been now proven that we most likely will have a 70 to 80% chance of achieving them. On average, male entrepreneurs will maybe have a 30 or 40% chance, but as an investor, one looks like they are ambitious, which is the male, even though we know they won't achieve it, and the female look like they're not ambitious. So making sure that you don't automatically say, oh, but therefore I'm going to just bump up my numbers. You could, but to stay authentic, provide a lot of backup of showing your pipeline and how much of those projections are already quite secure. And that will help the AI know, okay, this is why most likely there's a 70% chance they'll achieve it, whereas the other one, if I don't have it, I'll have to assume there's a 30% chance they won't. Okay. And then I think the last thing is to say that these are the mistakes, but we've talked already a little bit about the mistakes. If there's questions, I can always come back to it. Some of the mistakes that we do, that we often do, and especially, as I mentioned, not relooking or taking as a truth, and people can spot that a mile away. And one key last thing is that what's also happening on the investor side is that even if a startup is not an AI product startup, we do now question a lot more the entrepreneurs on how are you using AI, which would include fundraising, but for any part of the business. And so that's also something that's very important, that you make sure that, or you don't have to, but know that you're going to get more and more questions on why do you want to hire that person? Why not just use a couple of AI agents and that becomes your marketing manager? There's more and more of that happening. So make sure that you're prepared for that. And therefore it changes also quite a bit how much startups are asking for fundraising. On the other hand, there's definitely still some things that only humans, thank God, humans can do. And so be careful when you design your use of funds. In some I've seen, they're putting way too little because they assume that they could. There's a few entrepreneurs I've met, they'd like to be the first unicorn with only one employee. First, I don't think that's very healthy, but also there's still lots of things that we need humans to do, and that hopefully we will continue to. So that's a little bit of at least food for thought, so that we're open to your questions. Should I stop maybe sharing and then I'll share again later? Should I do that?
I can hide it without you doing anything.
Okay,
so
perfect.
Slides are gone. Thank you so much for the presentation. I personally found it very insightful. I know that AI can be very biased, but I never considered that within the fundraising niche of AI. AI can also be biased towards specific things, and it makes so much sense that considering the data it was trained on, that it leans towards US much more heavily than Europe, because if you are from Europe and you have looked at the US, you know that the worlds of fundraising are very different on two different continents. So that was actually a very interesting insight for me personally. And as we are within the Q&A section of our webinar, dear listeners and watchers, please drop your questions, anything that is connected to the AI and fundraising and how it's helping or disrupting our lives. Will be very happy to answer. And whilst you're collecting your thoughts, I personally have a question to you, considering you have been an investor and an entrepreneur, and you mentioned that you are a part of a lot of different committees that are evaluating startups. Um, is there a concern within the investor community of startups using AI? And if yes, then what are the concerns that investors are having?
I can't speak for all, but I do talk to quite a few. I think there's kind of three that pop up in my mind, and by the time I say the three, maybe a fourth one will come. The first one is skipping over some things that are important to actually spend time on. And I see that for me as an entrepreneur, meaning there's certain things that it's amazing how quickly AI will do it. Kind of write something, want to sharpen it and everything else. When it comes to strategy, and here's who I am, tell me who I should be, tell me my pricing model and things like this. Great, spend 10 minutes, read it, makes sense, I go for it. I think as an entrepreneur, and this is where I'm very much in discussions with myself and with others, it's kind of good that we do spend some time thinking, okay, let me really think about the different options. Let me go and maybe test some things. Let me myself make sure that I fully understand what are the underlying financial assumptions that I'm making. And so skipping, I think one of the things as an investor, we do sometimes feel that when we then ask level 2 question and the AI is not sitting there, the entrepreneur who seemed like answered level 1 of the question, I mean, the answer of level 1, a part of the answer, like amazingly, you dig in and you go like, okay, actually they had no clue. And it's funny because we saw that the last 10 years, many of us feel that accelerators created that at the pitch because they were so good at telling the entrepreneurs how to look good. But so many startups that we looked at, first of all, there was loss of authenticity, especially some accelerators. All the pitches look the same. They're all, we're going to do billions. There's very little. And then they all look so polished, whereas we know that usually the best investments are diamonds in the rough. And so that's the first thing that we're quite nervous about on AI, that it's used to skip some elements. The second element is that there's going to be either too fast or too slow use of AI in all parts of the business. So a number of entrepreneurs, as I mentioned before, they're saying, hey, I've put nobody, I'm only going to hire one person because I know AI will do the job of the first 10 people, versus others say, well, especially we work in countries where the labor cost is still much lower. Well, no, we're still putting 10 people to do, I don't know, or whatever, a full person to do a website for, let's say, a month or something. And it's like, wait, that's finished. No, like, even though you're low cost, that should be AI. So I would say that that's the second one. And the third one is, and that's probably more a personal one. What I've noticed in the last 20 years is that it's become so much easier to be an entrepreneur, which is a good thing, and AI is making it even easier. Will that mean that when things get tough, entrepreneurs are also going to go, okay, well, this was just a fun game. I got all this stuff. I don't. How much really, when we become an entrepreneur, in the past, it was so hard to even become an entrepreneur. It was really something that we just had to do, and whatever would happen. And I've been there. Like, the world kept telling me it just won't work, and it was just like, wait, let me put another 100K in this, or let me do one more fundraise. And that I'm starting to see is disappearing. And AI is also kind of, we don't feel as maybe as attached. And that, again, all these things are positive. But those would be three. But I'd love, because these are questions, but it'd be great to be a conversation. If you want to ask those who are listening, what else are they thinking or have they observed, that would be great. But those would be my three. Do you have any that you would add?
I personally don't really have the opinion on this because I got out of the investing game right when the first ChatGPT was launched.
Okay.
But even at that time, I did see a drastic difference because I used to use Tilum for evaluation of the applications, and you have a uniform form for everyone who applies. And at the time, I used to work for an accelerator, and we had hundreds of applications monthly. And when you read them, for 3 years I was reading, and I would right away know, does this idea make sense? Does this idea not make sense? Because the volumes are big and the quality not always the greatest. And when the AI entered this space, well, first of all, you see that it's been written by AI because it's just too perfect. And then at the moment, it's 2 years later, I don't know how people and how investors are evaluating at the very first screening, because everyone is using it just to make themselves not even smarter, but just to sound better. And it's so much, I think it should be so much harder to understand, is this a real idea, or is it someone trying something? And then again, yes, you can generate so many different versions and financials without even putting thought into that. And obviously it comes out when you have a real conversation one-to-one. But I think it's a little bit scary, because also if you brainstorm your ideas with only AI, more or less, then you are not taking into consideration so many other aspects that AI either didn't mention or just doesn't know that you need to know this. Mm-hmm. And I do agree it might be in the future. It's like, oh, we hit the bump. AI doesn't know what to do. I'm out of this game. I don't want to be an entrepreneur anymore. That is true. But my personal question to you, because when AI just entered the space, for me, looking down the road, let's say 5-10 years from now, everyone is training their own AI. Those who are fundraising are training it to, I don't know, look for investors, to adjust all of their materials, and investors are trying to make their screening jobs easier and due diligence jobs easier. In a few years down the line, I imagine that the founder AI will be talking to investor AI, and at least in the first part, there's the human connection is going to be lost. And in my personal opinion, without human, there is no innovation and there is no startup ecosystem as it is. What is your take how the future of fundraising is going to look like? Because I always go down, I'm the glass half empty, so I go the not very optimistic route. But what is your perspective on this?
So I'm a born optimist, and that's why I want to be in it, because I see where it could go really wrong. I think there's so many of us who are embracing AI, but also see in all aspects of where it could go really, really wrong. And I do think that as an investor, even when I'm kind of saying, hey, I'm not looking, even though I still continue to invest in new companies every year, I get at least 10 to 15 pitch or whatever connections, trusted from people who say, hey, we know you could look at this. And I feel badly because some weeks I'll have time, some other weeks I won't. So I probably look at 30% of what I get. And it's true that if I have super strong principles on investing. There's some very specific things I'm looking for. And I would love to have an AI agent, my fundraising agent, to at least kind of say, oh, you know what, you passed on over this one, but maybe this was the one that would be really good. And so, and it's same thing for the entrepreneur, to also be able to have these AI agents and say, instead of the list right now, working with entrepreneur, they have 400 investors on their list, and AI is really helping honing on some critical things, including elements of reputation, which is much better done. There's some things like that much better at AI than a human doing things one by one. So I think there will be, but what's going to be very important is that, again, as entrepreneurs, we stay as authentic as possible. And as soon as there will be, on the investor side, the ability for us to also be authentic, then I think that will be great. Because right now, I'm working on doing some personas of investors. And I saw like my persona does not exist. Again, I don't but if I really have to create it. So if AI is going to enable me to really create my persona and the things I really care about, and it can really filter great, then where I'd also think AI can be super helpful is back to automation. Because there's some things like right now, closing a deal, well, you know this, creating the syndicate, creating the data room, seeing who sent what where, even though it's getting more and more automated, including Dilem, it would be great to say, okay, now we've done it. Like we want to do it, like let's just get it over with. So that piece of automation, I think, great. And that's where it is. The piece that we all hope will happen, but can be very dangerous, is when it's a substitute for what we currently do as a human, especially on that. And that's the piece that I think we all have to be very careful, or I want to be part of that creation of that. Mm-hmm. Does that make, because it's still uncertain. So does it make sense or not sense? Yes. But is that clear what I'm saying? Okay.
To me, it is clear and it does make sense. I don't think we will ever lose the human part of it, but there's definitely a lot of manual work and I used to call it monkey job that you have to do. And if AI can help with that part, automate it and make it easier, and then you just go in and you verify the conclusions it came to, it makes life so much better and so much easier. And when it's fundraising, for instance, for founders, it will save them so much time. They can actually focus on doing business instead of trying to contact 400 investors on their list. And then before that, validating maybe 800 more to understand, does it make sense to actually ask for the funding? And on the investor side, it's also important to probably screen initially, because you as an investor, you have your sweet spot that you're looking for, the industry, the stage, and so on. And then pre-validating is also saving you a lot of time.
But I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, because here's Absolutely. What I'm seeing happening. Some entrepreneurs, in a way, smartly say, I know how to look good. AI is going to help me look good. They're going to go to the top of what floats to the top. And investors, most investors, I've been doing it for over 20 years. But when you start, you usually think all startups are equal. We have no idea which one's going to be successful or not. So you know what? If AI tells us that's the best one, let's go for it. So there's going to be a lot, because it saves so much time as an investor. Before, it was called spray and pray. Okay.
Mhm.
And that's going to happen, saying now it's less spray and pray. It's AI, and AI is so much more intelligent than me and can do so much more analyses. Why not let it do? We already have the first pure AI funds announced. And they're saying it's going to take 10 years to see if that model works, because actually, if it works, then people will say we don't need humans. We don't need that connection. And I think it's going to be so tempting on the investor side. A lot of investors for funds are saying, why do we pay you management fees? You're not giving us returns. So what for the next 10 years, let's use only AI. At least it's cheaper. And then we'll see. So it's going to be really, and thinking back to me as female entrepreneur, building businesses that don't quite fit the super fast, up or out and going for the unicorn. It's going to be for a while a real challenge to how do we stay authentic, because we don't want to put that we're going to generate 10 million in 2 years, but knowing that that's what the AI will be looking for, knowing that it's kind of okay, probably won't get there, but hey, at least they want it. So where I am nervous is that it's probably going to be 10 years before it will get to where I would love to be in 3 years.
It is a long time to go. But I also think that AI and doing predictions and using AI on the side of investor is much more relevant and makes sense when it's later stage startup, because you as an angel, you probably know better than most, when you are early stage startup, very often you do the bet more on the team and on the drive and somewhat on the idea as well. But you also know that the business might change because they will do 4 different pivots within the next 2 years, and they started with one thing and it can turn into a completely different thing. So I think at that stage, at least my perspective is that AI can't really assess at the moment, because it's more of a human touch you are assessing as an investor rather than numbers. That's what
we'll
I
see.
think.
Yeah.
At least I hope this is how it works, because the AI assessing a human part of us currently feels very wrong.
Yeah. Were there any questions, or should we start going a little bit in next steps? Because I want to make sure that I share a little bit on how, if some of you want to start using AI tools, including the efino.ai tool, that you can do so. But do you have any other question, or is there any other question before we?
There are no other questions. Everyone is saying that it was very insightful and good. And also there is an agreement that artificial intelligence can evolve, but the human intuition and creativity will remain an essential part of the future.
Okay. And what would be wonderful if there was an AI listening, because more and more, like, I couldn't believe it recently. Actually, someone every month I go and he gives updates on what's going on in AI. And last month it wasn't him. It was his AI twin.
Wow.
I felt something was a little different, but it was crazy, mannerism and everything else. So I wonder if there are any of those AI twins. I saw it was here, which would be great if they still would feel like, okay, but humans are still this one. But that's scary because that might be one day it's really my twin who's here. We'll see, my AI twin. Okay. So one of the things we'd be happy to provide you this little offer of, you can have for 7 days, you can use the tools of efino.ai, and basically you create a account, and then when you go to there's some tools you can use for free, but when you go to the membership, which is for the membership that it has a pricing of $99 a month, if you buy it for 6 months, then you can actually, when you go on it, you can get a free trial for 7 days. You don't have to provide credit card for that. And you can go to efino.ai, or ideally, well, on the Dylan platform, you can also find it if you want to mention where they can find it.
Absolutely. If you are a Dylan user, aka you're a startup who is registered and using Dylan, we have a marketplace where we have curated different selection of services and tools that founders need. And this is where you can find efino.ai. We have a listing, and if you forget, you can always find it there, and it will lead you to the needed place. And you can find it under AI tools. It's on top because it starts from A, and we have alphabetized it. But this is it. I would recommend everyone checking out Efino. I think you also have a free version. You can get a taste, and then you do a full 7-day trial. I think it's very useful tool, and especially if you're just starting now as a first-time founder, instead of trying to read the whole internet and figure it out on your own. I think the dedicated tool such as this one will help you immensely. Well, I think we have already concluded and did the key takeaways. Thank you. Let's see where this will lead us, this AI revolution. Let's hope to a good place and will not be getting that bad before we get to the good part. And I will thank you for your time and for your insights. It was, to me personally, it was very insightful presentation. And it's always very nice to hear from people in the industry and who actually lives and breathes this and has the domain expertise. It's always leads me to aha moments. And I'm sure those who have been listening to us also got a lot of useful insights from what you were saying. So thank you so much, Brigitte.
More than welcome. Made me also think. Yeah, because it's still questions I'm questioning, or questions I'm wondering myself on a regular basis. All the best to all you entrepreneurs. We're so lucky as investors to have you, and thank you to Dylan. Fantastic platform, fantastic team, also true entrepreneurs. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.